Right, hi guys. This is my second video on my SSG10. I did a HPA upgrade using the Wolverine Bolt, and I'm just going to take you through all of the mods that I've done now that I've HPA'd the gun. You can watch my previous video where I did a takedown and info on other stuff, but this video is going to be focusing on the mods around the whole HPA setup. So I'm going to start off with the setup of the barrel. So the barrel I cut off I think about 7 centimeters, so that used to be there. Literally cut it off, smoothed down the end, and then the end cap over here I put it in a lathe and just touched it just to take the threads off, and then epoxied the end cap in there and made it all perfectly straight. It's not going anywhere. I've got a Crazy Jet barrel, I think it's the 430, so same length barrel as was in the SSG10. Then so that's just a throwaway. I've got the Tridos TDC on top. I've got standard, all the hop-up chamber and everything is standard. I've got a Flamingo 60-degree bucking in there. Over here I've made 2 sleeves that fit snugly in the outer barrel, and that really makes the fit of the bolt a lot less. There's no vibration, it just perfectly sits in there, so just for consistency and accuracy. Also makes the bolt pull nice and smooth. So I'll take those out. Right, next I will take you through the silencer. So I've got the Nozzle large silencer here. A few things I've done to it. Firstly is I noticed when I put it on the gun, even before I'd cut the barrel down, it didn't sit perfectly straight. So I put the outer barrel in a lathe, screwed the silencer on. You could see the silencer had a bit of wobble, and it turned out it's because this surface here wasn't completely flush. So I just took like, maybe 1/10 of a millimeter off the face there, so that when it screws on, it's absolutely perfectly aligned, which means that I can have quite a small hole in the end of the silencer without the BB touching. When it comes to silence, the key is to have as small a hole as possible at the end, but obviously you don't want interference. Other things I've done is these little holes around here let a lot of sound through. I don't know why they have them. Very first thing you should do is put epoxy or something into the holes that go around it, so that the air can only escape out the middle. Yeah, it made a huge difference when I plugged those holes. Then in terms of the foam on the inside, basically the foam is going in this order, so that's the back and then going all the way through to the front. So I'm starting off with quite a tight piece that goes around the end barrel there, and then from then on it's basically alternating 2 big ones and then small big all the way to the end, and then right at the end quite a small hole at the end there. I played around quite a bit with the setup using my phone and just and a decibel meter, and the gun is extremely quiet, definitely the quietest airsoft gun I've ever heard. So the changes on the suppressor made a huge difference. Okay, next up let's go through the stock. So the biggest, probably the biggest, the most effort I put in was putting the Wolverine Category 5 regulator in when I put the bolt in, so that I can run the HPA bottle inside the stock. I didn't come up with this idea, other people have done it, but I don't think anyone's done it with the Category 5. In order to do this, firstly what I did is I got the bottle, so this is a 9CI bottle, and I very carefully measured and cut out basically the shape that I needed out of the stock. Once I'd done that, it was then a lot of time with a file and sandpaper to hone down the edges on the inside and try and make it as circular as possible so that the bottle can fit in. A lot of trial and error to get that right. The next thing I needed to do is this. The category 5 is far too wide to fit inside the neck of the stock. So I think it fits about over there when it's all inside. And you'll see that the regulator is quite wide. This part of the stock here was about 2 centimeters narrower. So if you look at the standard SSG10, I don't know what it's like on the VSR, but the standard SSG10 is about 2 centimeters narrow over here. So the big kind of calculated risk I took on this build was to expand the neck of the stock. So if I just demo what I did there, I mounted the stock in a vise. Let's try and get it upright. So I mounted the stock in a vise. I got 2 of these tire irons and something a bit like a bolt or something, and then I pushed these tire irons up inside the stock and then put a spacer between them like that, and then I closed down this end here with a G-clamp. So by closing down with the G-clamp, it ends up widening, or at least trying to widen this area over here. I then used a heat gun and just heated up this area, obviously trying to get it so that it was a bit pliable but not too hot. So you need to play around with it a bit. What I suggest doing is when you cut the slot out here, get a piece of the plastic, and you can put it next to where you're applying the heat gun so that you can always use it as a bit of a sample to understand how soft the gun is getting. I then did that probably over about a 15-minute period, slowly increasing pressure on the G-clamp, moving this a little bit forwards and back inside the stock until I'd opened up the neck here sufficiently that the regulator could easily fit down. I had very little dremeling on the inside, and the regulator fits pretty perfectly. The next thing I did is, if you have a look, I'll try and add some light here. If you have a look down inside the stock towards the neck, you'll see there's a white putty. That's like a epoxy putty down there. So it's a 2-part epoxy. I mixed it and filled in this whole sort of neck area over here with epoxy, and then drilled a hole through that goes through to let the cord, so the air line and the battery connectors to go through that hole there. The reason I did that is I noticed that with the weight of the bottle in the back, I just wasn't happy. I felt like there was a little bit of bend in the stock. It wasn't from any removal of material. I think it's just like that naturally. And by putting this epoxy in this area over here, it really strengthened up the stock. It's a lot more solid now. I also glued in the trigger guard, just epoxied it in because I found that if you moved it backwards and forwards a bit, it would make a little creaking noise that I didn't like, so I just epoxied it in. It doesn't need to move or anything, so it's just permanently there. So if I just show you what it looks like, so if I get the bottle, obviously the regulator is in there, so it's kind of the regulator position is about like that in the stock. The bottle goes in with the regulator on. I then just have this Velcro here just to snug it down a bit, and then the end goes on there, and then a bit of Velcro just to stop this rubber pad of the butt from coming off at all. I didn't have this at first in the big game. This ended up falling off, so it's just a little bit more solid now. So that's what it looks like. You can check your pressure, you can pump the bottle up without taking it out, and it's all in one piece. It works very nicely. I get about 200-250 shots with this 3000 psi bottle, 9CR bottle. Okay, next thing to go through is just around the receiver and the bolt itself. So a few things I've done there. First one is that I noticed with the HPA I shoot about 3.3 joules is my limit, and the gun I can take it up to about 3.6 or so, but at 3.3 joules I was getting a lot of inconsistency up and down with the hop. Sometimes it would under hop, sometimes over hop, and I deduced it was because of the sudden acceleration of the BB through the backing. So I wanted to slow down the rush of air as it fired. So at first what I did is I made a little thing here that goes in the nozzle. I think it's got about a 3mm hole in it, and that fits. I could sort of super glue it in there, or just fits in there, and that then reduces down the sudden rush of air that comes out, and straight away that made a huge difference on the up-down consistency. What I then did after that is I just wasn't happy with this nozzle design that comes with the Wolverine Bolt. I preferred the original design. It's kind of quite different on the stock Novrich. So I ended up just machining my own nozzle extension here and just glued it in, and then that's a 3mm hole in the end there. So effectively, you actually, if you've got a lathe or something, you don't really need this. You can always just make your own with the standard nozzle that comes with the SSG10. So this is the one that I use. I actually made it slightly wider than the Wolverine one. I just found it's less wobble in that in the O-ring at the front of the bolt. I put a spring there, a mod that lots of people do, just that when you pull back on the bolts it kind of goes forward by itself almost. So it's actually a spring from inside the silencer. Then on the receiver part itself, first thing I did is I put a metal tube inside the receiver, and I epoxied what is normally this window over here that would typically, eject the cartridges on a real steel gun. I find that it just ends up, by having that there, you end up having to camo it because it's quite a bright silver, and then obviously dust and dirt and grime and stuff can get in onto the bolt. So I just put epoxy in there, waited for it to cure, took the Picatinny rail off, took everything off, put it in a lathe, and then just lathed it down, so it's basically a perfect circle. It's all enclosed now. Less noise, less reflection, no dirt, etc. can get in. A few other things. So on the bolt here, I put a piece of plastic just on this area here, and then just sanded the plastic down so that when it comes into here, it's an absolutely perfect fit. Zero wobble backwards and forwards here. So the nozzle is always seated into exactly the same depth into the backing, again just for consistency. So that's a little mod I did there. Other things I did, so this is kind of a throwback from previous mods I'd done on the trigger, of having this little screw here so it makes the trigger adjustable, so I can adjust it. I've also played around with some rubber inside, so it kind of gives a two-stage trigger feel. There's the first stage and then a bit harder to make it go. Other things, what I did here, so this was an interesting one, I haven't seen anyone do this, is the bolts that go in the bottom of the gun. So normally, so this is the standard one that goes behind the trigger guard. You then get these two others. Now, I'm not sure why, but standard, this is a Phillips head, and then these two are need Allen keys for these two. I got, I think they 6mm bolts, I think, and I just got ones with Phillips heads, so that all three are Phillips. So you just need a Phillips screwdriver to strip the gun down. And then this one here, I made it probably about 4 or 5 millimeters longer than the standard. The reason I did that is, if you look over here, when you pull the bolt back to actually allow a BB into the gun, you don't need to pull it back as far as it allows you. So the bolt will allow you to go all the way, so that far back, and it's being stopped by the bolts coming up into contact with this nozzle, the inlet over here. But you only actually need to pull it back about that far to allow a BB to come up into the chamber. So what I did by making this longer is, when it screws in, and it took a bit of trial and error to get it the exact right length, but the way it is now is it screws in and it goes further in so that it actually ends up going into the slot on the bolt. So what happens is, when that's screwed in, it then stops sooner. So the slot in the bolt is coming up in contact here as you pull the bolt back, and stops against this screw as opposed to against this. So it's reducing that amount of travel. So the travel on the bolt is solid stop up against the screw, and it's the perfect amount of travel that you need. So a bit quicker to reload, and it's not coming back and pushing up against this, it's rather just pushing up against this retainer screw here. Inside is all pretty standard. I mean, the bolts, Wolverine bolt instructions are pretty clear. I did shorten this cable a bit. It sticks up on some Velcro on the inside of the stock. Standard tubing goes back, and I have this little rubber thing here so that it kind of goes around like that and into there. So a few other little things I haven't mentioned. So first one is, in order to get the Cat 5 to fit in the neck, I needed to change the little plugs that go in the top of the regulator. So I got little my own plugs. I cut them down and screwed them in so that the regulator is narrower, because you would find when you get its default, the plugs that plug these holes here are quite wide, and obviously you want this top to be as narrow as possible. And the other thing is, this epoxy around here is to allow me to have an Allen key, and I've made a little hole in the top of the stock here that an Allen key goes down, and it just helps guide the Allen key so that I can adjust the pressure. So the Allen key is effectively coming down this hole, gets guided into there, and then it's easy to adjust the pressure on the regulator. So you don't need to take the bottle out or anything like that to adjust the pressure. The other thing is, I noticed when you fire the gun, as you release the trigger, the fixed volume cylinder inside the bolt fills up with air, and then it kind of rushes forwards, hits some O-rings, and kind of cuts off the air, and that makes quite a lot of noise. So in fact, it was one of the loudest parts of the gun, once I'd sorted out the silencer and stuff, was the cylinder refilling. So what I did is I took this apart in here, took this little screw out, and put a bolt. I think it's also a 6mm bolt that I kind of screwed down in there, and played around with the depth of it to restrict the air that comes into the bolt. Obviously with a sniper you don't need a high refresh rate, So I wanted to slow down the speed at which the cylinder refilled with air so that it made less noise. By doing that, it made a huge difference to the reload. So obviously with the silencer off, it makes a bit of noise, but if you fire, that's the sound, and then it's that refill sound there. That refill sound is a lot quieter now than it was after restricting the speed at which the air can rush in there. And this is shooting at about 3. No, in fact, this is I think about 2.8 joules right now, and it's pretty quiet even just straight out the nozzle. It's pretty much all the changes that I did. If you've got any questions or anything, give me a shout, comment on the video, like it, and hope it's useful. And if anyone wants to do a similar conversion, just shout and I can help you along the way. Cheers, guys.